Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today, our guest is Morgan Raynor. She's one of our coaches based out of LA. Morgan, I'll turn it over to you. Give a little intro on yourself.
Thanks guys so much. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm a stick coach, stick mobility coach. I've been training it'll be 5 years next month. Got into personal training 5 years ago. I started out as a dancer. I was classically trained in ballet, and then switched to modern dance and turned it into a professional career and used training on the side to pay the bills. And it was, it's always been a great passion of mine, just fitness in general. And yeah, so I moved out here to LA last year with my husband, and we used to live in New York. So I went to SUNY Purchase, which is where I, trained in dance, and then moved directly to the city afterwards. Let's see, that's about it. Started my own business in 2019. I want to say, so I got into training when I became injured. So I was in a rehearsal in 2015, and it was a late night rehearsal, a long rehearsal. We were rehearsing for like an evening length work, and I fell on my foot. So I was doing this like big jump turn thing, fell on my foot and had a Jones fracture, which I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's common in dancers, it's common in basketball players. The fifth metatarsal breaks, and there's like a certain area in the fifth metatarsal where there's not a lot of blood flow. So it's not going to heal unless you have surgery. So I had some hardware put in and kind of realized that I wanted to have a long, healthy career, I probably needed to start some strength training and cross training. So I was already coaching swimming at the time, and I was working at some boutique fitness studios, and one of them was the cycling studio. So I was cycling and I was swimming. And so coming back from the injury, I decided to add running into the mix, and then started training for triathlons. And then from there, got really into strength training. And then one of my friends actually approached me and asked, she was a trainer, and she was about to start a new fitness manager job at New York Sports Club. And she was like, we're looking for trainers. We're looking to hire people. And she was like, are you certified? I said no, but it's something I've always wanted to try is like personal training. So she's like, well, if you get your cert, I have a job for you. So I was like, well, there's nothing for me to lose. So I got my cert that summer. It was about a year and a half, 2016, after I broke my foot. Yeah, from there, the rest was history. I left the corporate fitness world because I wanted to continue learning. So training 15 sessions a day and being exhausted on the weekends. Yeah, it was like, I was just really, really into it. I just really wanted to keep learning and wanted to keep going. And obviously I was, pretty successful at the corporate gym, and I didn't have time to do any certs. I didn't have time to do weekend workshops. I didn't have time to study, and I didn't have time to progress further. So I decided to leave the corporate gym world and start my own thing. So now, that was when I started, I got certified in StrongFirst with kettlebells, and I did FRC, and I started getting into animal flow, and was really able to kind of take my training to the next level. Especially when I met my husband, Chad, who had already been certified for you guys. He opened my eyes up to the stick mobility world. And the first time I saw him use the sticks, it actually made me think of like a ballet bar. So when you're dancing, you have the bar there for pretty much the same few things that you use the stick for stability, for leverage, and things like that. So I kind of was already used to using a tool, something to hold on to, and kind of had my mind already in that zone. So that was really cool to kind of transition into stick with that background of the ballet bar, and that's kind of how I approach my training too, is when I use my dance background. So I use my knowledge of the body. A lot of my training, when I say training, my training to become a trainer kind of started with just like intuition. So because I had grown up in the dance world, I can look at somebody moving, or I can look at myself moving and understand which part of the body is initiating the movement. If something looks off, I can kind of intuitively know what might be off and kind of how to fix it. So if you're falling off your leg, then you need to shift your weight this way. Or, if you're trying to get down to the floor to do floor work, this is how you want to fall. This is how you want to, spread out your weight on the floor so that you're not going to injure yourself or someone you're partnering with. So a lot of my training practice, what started out as kind of intuition, and then I kind of put the words into what my body was trying to say. So I think that's, that's something that is different and interesting about the way that I train. And then I think the other part with that is contact and partnering with dance. I think it's super important to understand like how to move with another human, whether that's, through improvisation or choreography, or, even using that counterbalance, and even like with the sticks, with that, pulling against and pushing into, understanding that zero, and how to use another body in your practice is something that I find really cool.
How old were you when you started into dance?
So I think. Oh, wow. I think I was 4 and I started out doing, the tap, the ballet. I was like dabbling in a bunch of different like jazz, acrobatics, all of the things. I used to actually hate ballet. So I started ballet last, actually. I did like some, they do like these combination classes of like 20 minutes of tap and 20 minutes of ballet. And once I grew out of those classes, I was just like, ballet, it's for sissies. Like, that's not for me. I know. As like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, I was saying this. One of my friends actually convinced me, I danced with her and we were like best friends. And she convinced me to try, she wanted to take some ballet lessons. And I was like, no. So our moms came up with a solution that was, we can do a private lesson. So a private lesson with myself and my friend. And so I agreed to that. I was like, okay, we can do it for a year and see how it goes. And then I fell in love with it. I was like, holy shit, this is not easy. This is not for sissies. Like, what was I talking about? This is crazy. Like what I'm trying to do with my body right now is something I've never felt before. So I actually then kind of switched and only did ballet for a few years. So I would do the jazz and tap on the side and, continue to perform here and there with that. But I was in the ballet studio 5 to 6 days a week, starting at the age of 9. So I just like kind of dove right in and fell in love with it. And from there, went to summer programs, starting at the age of, I think 15, was away every summer until I graduated high school. I would go to Seattle, San Francisco, New York City, other programs in Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. And so I became obsessed.
How many hours a day were you training?
So when I was really, really, really into it, I was dancing from about 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon until 9 o'clock at night. And that was Monday through Thursday. Saturdays, we would also spend in the studio from like 9 a.m. to, 2-ish. And Fridays, like a couple of hours. And sometimes we would add rehearsals on Sundays too. So we were performing year round. We had a lot of stuff to get ready for, and I would take as many classes as I possibly could. And then plus going back and forth, I was at that point, when I was a teenager, going between 2 different studios. So I was learning from a bunch of different teachers, taking like literally as many classes as I could, performing as much as I possibly could. And it really took over my life.
The difference between tap and ballet, I mean, it would seem tap is much faster, where ballet is just much more isometric, time under load type. Would that be correct to say?
Definitely. I think tap is more rhythmic. It's more syncopated. So you're finding you're a part of the music. So you're like literally making sounds with the music, but also like in between. So you're constantly trying to find places to, find your own voice in the music with tap, because you're literally becoming part of the music. With ballet, it can be fast, it can be slow, but yeah, you're right. It's definitely much more time under tension. You're doing a lot of passive range holds, right? You're grabbing your leg, you're putting it up here, and then you let go of it and try to hold it, So like all these, principles that we learn in fitness and in mobility apply to the dance. And so yes, the ballet is much more elongated than the tap, and it's more about what you are presenting on stage than what it sounds like. So yes, the ballet, you're dancing on top of the music and with the music, but just in a different way than tap. And then if you contrast that with, or compare it with modern dance is kind of both. It's much more grounded than ballet. So you're in the floor, you're using the floor almost as like a prop or a tool or like a set. So it's a part of the dance. You're going to be on the floor, you're going to be rolling around, you're going to be jumping and landing, and like it's much more athletic. And with modern, you don't even have to be dancing with music. it can be totally silent. You can stomp and clap and make the music as you go. And so it kind of has both of those dynamics in it. So that's what I really fell in love with. And that's what I still continue to perform and choreograph, is that modern contemporary style kind of dance.
So my daughter, she's 3 years old, and I eventually want to get her into dance. If you were to start her in a particular type, like you have this well-rounded background of dance and you kind of have all these different elements, would you start that same progression, like start in tap, like go to ballet, and then start introducing more, or does it matter?
It depends. I think obviously when I started, I wasn't like, my parents weren't like, she is going to be a professional dancer, so we're gonna like take these steps.
Yeah.
They were just kind of like, oh, I think she'll like it. And then I just kind of like, it just took on its own life. But I think that each discipline or each technique has something different to offer. So I think that starting her out in a bunch of different techniques would be something that she can kind of like explore and see what she's drawn to. There's also a lot of forms of dance, like hip hop and African dance, and even like dance hall. One of the choreographers that I dance with, and I've danced with her for a long time and just kind of like built her company with her. She was born and grew up in Jamaica, and dance hall is a part of her choreography. I think the dance world now is kind of bringing these traditionally seen as lower art forms. They're bringing them up to the stage. So I think just kind of introducing her to as many different styles as possible is going to make her a very versatile dancer. And, I will say that one thing that I struggled with moving from such a ballet structured background into something more loose and free, like modern, or even like dance hall when I was starting out with this company, it kind of trains you to have this like shyness about you. So you don't want to like show yourself. You don't want to show emotion. You don't want to like let yourself loose and have fun. So I think that introducing that early is great because you're going to be able to just be a better performer. So as many types as possible.
Yeah. Just let her explore.
Yeah, just to kind of, definitely. Yeah.
Do most dancers undergo a training regimen with weights, or they tend to be a little more hesitant to do that?
Well, this is another thing that I think is changing in the dance world. When I was growing up in the dance world, we were told, do not ever lift a weight, ever. Strength training was just frowned upon. So when I was at SUNY Purchase, being a part of the dance conservatory was like, a different college experience than most. You're in the dance conservatory 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And, you are dancing from 8:30 in the morning, sometimes until 10 o'clock at night, plus you're performing on the weekends. It's like really intense. It's crazy. And obviously you'll have other classes that you'll go to throughout, and you'll leave the dance building for a few hours, but then you'll of course have to come right back, and it's intense. One of the things that they kind of warned us about or told us to stay away from was sports, athletics, and not only because you don't want to get big and muscular, but you don't want to get injured, and then also you don't want it to take away from your dance. So I joined the swim team my freshman year. And yeah, I got a lot of backlash from some of my professors. And, it's swimming. It's not like Olympic lifting. It's not like rock climbing. It's not something where you're really going to get injured, other than if you're doing something incorrectly. It's low impact and it's aerobic, and unless you're going fast or training for a race or whatever. Our practices were like at 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was like I had time to go to practice, and I had to miss a few meets here and there, but it wasn't like taking priority over my dance. But yeah, I got a lot of backlash over that. And I know a lot of dancers that got injured because they were not strong enough, because they weren't cross training. And you're told to foam roll, and you're told to stick this ball, like sit on this ball in your glute, and a lot of like passive, like just stretch, like a lot of passive release techniques. And it's not going to make you stronger. So that was something. And I, joining the swim team, I've always been very physically active. And I can always, my body just, it's always been pretty resilient. So I can handle a lot. I can handle a lot of stress on my body. So I was always just kind of like looking for more, and always got backlash from it. You know, going to the gym early in the morning, if I wasn't swimming or if I wasn't in season for swimming, you know, people would be like, you're crazy. What are you doing that for? You know? And, you know, it was always like, I wasn't really doing a lot of strength training because I was just so like, I was so ingrained with the idea that strength training is just not, you can't strength train, you can't lift up weights. Mm-hmm. So it was always just like cardio or, you know, things like that. And like I said, it wasn't until after my injury when I started lifting and actually strength training, and, you know, I haven't had an injury since. And, I've coached other dancers through their injuries. I know I've coached dancers that have had like full hip replacements and have had hip problems forever, or knee problems or back problems. And, you know, when you're constantly just doing this repetitive motion with your body at these extreme angles and extreme ranges of motion, you need to train and strengthen those areas. So no, you're not encouraged to, but I think that mentality is sort of changing. Since I've graduated, I've gone back to teach at Purchase and do a couple of auditions there. And so talking with the dancers that are now in that college program, they're definitely learning more about conditioning and strength training and, you know, some principles behind that. So thankfully, I think it's turning around. But when I was training and growing up, definitely not discouraged from that. So.
Well, you're dancing for, shoot, I mean, you're saying you're going from like 9 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. at night sometimes. Do you think it would benefit a lot of dance programs where if they did incorporate a strength training program, just, you know, maybe cut 2 or 3 hours out of the dancing, and would that hurt your dancing? No,
I don't think so at all. I think it would help. You know, they did have, when we were there, we did do some somatic practices, you know, some meditation and yoga and things like that. But I think more specific strength training and mobility, you know, joint strength training would be more beneficial than something like yoga. You know, dancers are super pliable already. So doing a yoga practice isn't really going to help you, but doing something like functional range conditioning and stick mobility and actually lifting weights would greatly benefit the dancers. And you could definitely take out some classes here and there to make it happen, or, you know, just replace some of the somatic practices with that strength training. There's definitely time for it, and it's definitely needed. So things move slow. I think that a lot of people that are, you know, my age, I'm 30, so like my generation and, you know, a little bit younger going. So like I said, I was teaching at Purchase. I taught there for a year, and I think that, you know, people that are my age can go to these institutions and bring about change a little bit quicker. Because you know that all of our, you know, the professors that are teaching now were the same professors that were teaching when I was there almost 10 years ago. So yeah, it'll be slow, but we can change it, and it would definitely help.
Yeah, it's usually the old blood tends to not want to change what they've been doing for their career. It's this is the way we've always done it. Yeah. So this is the way we'll continue to do it mentality, right?
Oh, definitely. I remember like I was performing at Purchase, and I went back, and one of my old teachers, she was like, Morgan, those triceps, those are not dancer triceps. Like, I could see your triceps. I was like, what? Oh, thanks, I guess.
She's like, you got a horseshoe back there.
Yeah. She's like, what are those triceps? This is crazy. I was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So the yoga was basically pretty much your recovery work then?
Yeah. So in a program like that, where, you know, you're just like going, they're like, oh, let's throw in some somatic practices to help the dancers recover. Let's, you know, throw in some meditation and yoga and Alexander technique, whatever. Yeah, I skipped those classes a lot because it would, you know, be much more, it would be in my best interest to sleep instead or something like that, or go to the gym. So yeah, they're kind of just like, they just kind of threw it in there to just be like, here we go, like this should fix those problems, right? No, it didn't. So that was supposed to be our recovery work. That was supposed to be our cross training. And definitely wasn't. And a lot of dancers were in my position where we were just like, I'm just not going to go. And I'm going to go visit the PT instead. Or, I'm going to go to the gym or I'm going to sleep, because they just weren't kind of giving us what we needed. I wish that we had somebody there to train us. I wish somebody was there to just be like, all right, here's how, we took anatomy classes, but like, here's how your anatomy actually works. And when you're doing this movement in dance, your hip is actually, you're externally rotating and you're extending the knee. And like, this is why we need to work on, the internal rotation of the hip and all of that kind of thing. But we didn't. And so I would love to, go back to university or any professional dance training program and work with dancers on, conditioning the body and training your joints specifically so that you don't end up with knee, ankle, back problems, hip problems. I've seen it all. It happens to so many dancers, and it would really help to just kind of get ahead of it, get in front of it.
Well, I would assume the injury rate is probably pretty high, but probably more from just repetitive overuse.
Yeah,
definitely. And it depends on who you work for, and it depends on like boundaries. So modern dance, contemporary dance, especially in New York, is concert dance. So you're performing on stage, different from film, and there are no agents for that. There are no unions for that. So you kind of like have to go out and find your own work. You have to do all the stuff yourself. And with, because there are no unions, the dancers are not protected. So if you're injured, if you get injured, then you're probably going to be out of a job. And like, you don't get workers' comp. You don't have any benefits whatsoever, because that's just the way it is. And there's always going to be somebody right there in the wings ready to go on stage for you. Oh, yeah. And so you're like, it's hard to make those boundaries, saying, in rehearsal, I can't do it again. I don't think I can keep going. It's my body's kind of at its limit. Saying something like that to a director that's up here and all high and mighty and is, literally has control over everything. They're going to be like, okay, well, if you're not going to do it, then Sally over here is ready and she's been learning your part. So we're just going to hire her instead. See you later. So I think that's a huge problem with the dance world, is that there's not a lot of protection. And it's hard for dancers. Like I was saying before, like most dancers start in that ballet training and are really intensive in that. And it kind of promotes this very like insecure, apologetic kind of attitude where, you have to be like extremely grateful to be there. You have to be extremely grateful to be on stage performing for this person or with these people. Setting those boundaries is like something they train you not to do. So that's a big problem in the dance world, and something also that I think would be even slower to change than, strength training, unfortunately.
Well, because it always kind of seems like they portray, in whether it's a TV show or a movie, you kind of always get that feeling that most directors or coaches are of that mindset, right? Kind of like slave drivers in essence.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely been a part of processes and works that are just like that, where they just expect you to come into rehearsal ready to go full out for 4 hours, 6 hours, and have no regard for the way that you're feeling. But I've also been a part of a process that is not that way, where you get plenty of breaks and you're constantly asked how you're feeling and how you're doing, and a more collaborative effort. Yeah, it just kind of depends. The unfortunate part is that usually the companies with the most money and the most performance opportunities are those ones that are the slave drivers, with the big, director who's sitting there like this and just waiting for you to do the next step. So, when you're like, I'm going to be a dancer, I'm going to be a part of the company, I'm going to, when you're trying to make a living as a dancer, you strive for those companies that are kind of usually under that mindset of, we're going to push you until you break. Yeah, it's tricky.
That's the business side, right? I mean, it's the business side of any industry.
You're essentially a professional athlete out there, I mean, I know Dennis and I have always talked about how dancers are just some of the best movers and best athletes out there.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, a lot of times treated like replaceable. You're all just replaceable. And, you can't do it, I'll find somebody else that will. Yeah. And you have a lot of dancers, especially younger dancers, that will work for free. So getting paid is hard too. And again, like without the unions and, people don't usually have agents in the concert dance world. It's like getting a paycheck. I've been a part of projects where I just am expecting a paycheck and like never get it.
Oh, damn.
I know, but that's the whole thing of like setting boundaries and things like that. So as I've gotten older, I know now to sign contracts, to make sure you're going to get paid, to ask before you say, before you agree to a project, ask dancers that have worked with that person before, like, were you paid on time and did they take care of you and things like that. But as a young dancer, just graduating, you're just like, you want it all. You just want to perform. You want to get out there. So it can be a challenge to get paid.
It's almost like there needs to be like a mentorship program for dancers. So that way they get that from experienced dancers like yourself of what to watch for, what to be on the lookout for. Yeah,
definitely. When I was teaching at Purchase, spent 15 minutes of our class just sitting down with the dancers, like answering their questions about post-graduation, about, working with dancers or working with choreographers and what that's like, and setting those boundaries and things like that. Because, when I was there, we didn't have many teachers that were open to talking about things like that. Yeah. And we had, a couple seminars about it, but nothing like in depth. It's almost like you wish that there was a class dedicated to how to set your boundaries and how to take care of yourself and make sure that when you're in the dance world and you're working, that you're not taken advantage of. It's like they stress all these extra like dance history and anatomy and massage class, but like, the whole business side of it, you're essentially working for yourself. Like a lot of the dance world is freelance. So it's how you network, it's who it's how you audition. You want to be able to, if you want to go teach a master class somewhere, like what are your rates? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And you want to be able to set that up besides just your resume, here's what I've performed and here's who I've performed with, but you want to be able to do some of the business side of it.
When you transitioned over to personal training, a lot of the stuff that we are taught in the training world, did you instinctively maybe question some of it with your dance background and go, kind of doesn't make sense?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the first one I can think of is squatting with your knees behind your toes. Like if you watch any dance performance, if you watch any dancer, one of the very first exercises that you'll do is plies, which means to bend the knees. And when you do a grand plie, a big deep plie, no matter which version you're doing, your knees go over your toes and you lift your heels too. So hearing that, squatting with your knees over your toes, squatting with your knees over your toes, lifting your heels is just wrong. You should never, ever do it. I was just kind of like, well, I mean, I do that every single day.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And I've literally never had a knee issue, an ankle issue, a hip issue, a back issue. Like, I was like, okay, sure. And then also, never rounding your back. Like your spine always has to be extended and your shoulders always have to be pulled back. And I'm like, well, in order to move, like, you got to round the spine. You have to rotate. Like you just, you have to use your spine. It's what moves your torso. So that was another big one. And I think scapular movement in general. So when I got into modern dance, the technique that I learned primarily and fell the most in love with was Martha Graham's technique. And her technique is based on the pelvis and the spine and the back. Her whole technique is based on contract and release, which is like spinal flexion and extension, rotation of the spine. And then almost like every movement starts in the pelvis and then the rest of the body kind of grows from that. So if you're moving through space, if you're literally just walking through the space, your pelvis is initiating the movement. So your legs react to your pelvis shifting forward and your legs catch you. If you're extending through the spine, it's almost like your head extends, relax, and then your arms can extend and reach out from there. So all of your upper body movement stems from the spine and the scapula. So when I got into training, it was almost like they wanted me to teach like just very stiff upper back and scapular movements, where I was always taught and always moved from the pelvis. So if I move my pelvis, if I shift this way, then my spine is going to react this way. And then it'll allow space for my arms to move out this way. So one of the things that people always ask me is, how is your back so toned? And like, how is your back so strong? And it's literally because I've always trained that spinal movement from the pelvis. I've always trained the scapula to slide and glide along my back whenever I move my arms in any way. And, that full range movement from the spine and the scapula enables me to be able to strengthen at each end range of whichever upper body exercise that I'm doing. So yeah, those are just a few of the things that in the training world I was taught, and then I was like, I don't know, this is weird.
Well, I think that's a huge advantage for you as opposed to like me personally. I didn't have any of that. So when I got into it, what they taught me, I was like, okay, that's what I have to teach then, right? So I didn't really start to question that until, years into my career. So you already had that head start, which is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when I train, I like to approach it almost like learning choreography. So if I'm teaching somebody a new exercise or a new drill or new movement pattern, I'm looking for, basic understanding first and then getting into the details. So instead of giving them a whole set of like rules, I tend to just say I tend to either just show the movement and tell them to like repeat it, obviously without weight or anything like that, or, just give them a task. So if it's, a hip hinge, I'll say, okay, you're going to stand, a foot away from the wall, and I want you to reach your hips back to the wall, right? So very task-based instead of, okay, as you lean forward with your chest, you're going to keep your spine straight and you're going to shift your weight back and you're going to reach your hips back. But, I'll either just show the movement or just give them a very simple task without any details, and then work from there into, what I specifically want them to do. And I call it like making a mess and then refining the movement, which is something that I definitely practice in my dance practice with learning choreography. Is like, at first you're just trying to get the general shape, it's a lot thrown at you all at once, and you're just trying to like understand the actual shape, and then you can kind of go in and switch the intention. So instead of like turning your hand this way, I want you to actually think about your thumb initiating the movement and spiraling around all the way through your wrist into your elbow, something like that. Kind of like just throwing stuff at them and then refining from there, obviously taken from my dance training.
It's like you just kind of give them this, here's the big picture. And then once they kind of understand that, it's like, yeah, let them go, let them mess up, let them fail, and then just slowly clean it up so you're not giving them too much information.
Definitely. And I always have, like, when I start working with people, I always have people that like ask a bunch of questions like, well, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? I'm like, just like, literally don't think about it. Just do what I'm asking you to do. I want to see it first, and then I want to refine from there. Because a lot of times like cues can get confusing, especially, the past year we've been training virtually. So if you like give all these cues and you say all these things and it's like just mumbled jumbled words, then it's just going to be a little bit too much. So you just, I just try and just like do the movement. Let me just see it. And then let's refine it. And, and I'll tell you what I want you to intentionally focus on. And yeah, it also kind of helps me see, like I was talking about before, that my very intuitive, view on movement. It helps me kind of see, if that person's like falling over when they're doing this, like which way are they falling? And then I can kind of fix it from there, just using my intuition. And then that when they mess up, that can influence what I want them to focus on.
Like everybody is afraid of making a mistake when they're taught to move or lift anything. It's everybody's, I don't want to make a mistake. You're like, well, we don't even know what you do, so we don't even know how. We got to see what your base is. What are you inclined to do? How does your body organize itself first? Before we can't correct something before we've even seen it, right?
Definitely. One of the words that I try not to use as much as possible is form. Like, I want to teach you like good form. What is good form? You know, like it's different for everybody. So my good form is going to look way different than your good form, you know, and it's, you know, that's just the way it is. Our bodies are built differently. Also, when I'm teaching certain movements, I know that my hip abduction is crazy. You know, I know my hip external rotation from living in a turned out position is crazy, is a kind of elite compared to most people. So when I demonstrate these movements, I purposefully do not like go to my end range, because people will look at that and they'll either just like fuck it up and they'll just like hike their hip, or like royally, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell you, like you're not gonna be able to do it like I can. Or or they'll just be so overwhelmed, they're like, I can't do that, like what are you talking about? So I tend to like try and, you know, I just want you to lift a centimeter off the floor, or like this is isometric, you're not actually going to go anywhere or, you know, do anything, because people they're just like you were just saying, they're afraid to mess up, they're afraid, they want to look like me, and I'm like, no, like your form is going to be different than mine. Your ranges of motion are different. So it's not, don't try to look like me doing the movement. It's not going to look the same.
So those Instagram posts, you know, where your legs are up high, you're just holding back a little bit there.
Totally.
You haven't shown like your true mobility.
Totally.
That's
the world
crazy.
may never know.
Yeah.
No, I will say sometimes on Instagram, you know, you got to show off a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely, I'll do some full range movements for the gram. But but when I'm individually teaching someone, I'll just be like, it's not going to look like this, or I'll just hold back, you know, be like, I just want tiny little lifts.
Well, I think you've got to show people what's possible, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, we preface that with, look, the vast majority of people out there aren't going to achieve this, but here's what's possible if you have the right qualities and if you put the right amount of work in, right?
Yeah, totally. And you know, I've trained some people too where they'll just be like, well, I don't feel it. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I'm like, all right, well, listen, you know, we're starting out really slow. You're gonna, you know, what I'm focusing on right now is the intention behind the movement. And so then I can say, you know, once we work through this, once we get past this level, this is what you can do. And then boom, like up. And then it's just like, oh, wow. Or like grab a huge kettlebell and just be like, boom. Like if you understand that shoulder flexion or that end range movement at an isometric level with just your body weight, then you can start progressing and actually pressing a heavy ass kettlebell without injury. You know, Another like party trick I like to show is the weighted pull-up. So I love training weighted pull-ups mostly because they're really impressive, but they're super satisfying. And that was I guess I like training them because they were hard for me when I first started. So now that I've trained them and kind of mastered them, I like to show that progress. And I have videos of like struggling with a 12 kilo, struggling with a 16 kilo, struggling with a 24 over and over and over and over again. And then finally mastering that 24 kilo pull-up. Nice. It just kind of shows, that was a big one for me.
Are you going to do that Iron Maiden challenge with StrongFirst, where you do, what is it, the pull-up, the press, and the pistol? Yeah.
So I tried it. Okay, so when I did my StrongFirst Level 2 kettlebell cert, I trained for it, and I tried it, and I failed. So I had the press. I had to train the press a little bit. I had to train the pistol a little bit, but those were pretty easy for me to get. The pull-up was really hard, and I started training for it maybe 3 to 4 months before the cert, before the test. And I could get my 20 kilo. I just could not get over the bar with the 24. So I failed. And this was in 2019. And so I was going to try again. I was going to do a different certification because you have to test out at a cert. So I was going to do a body weight cert. And so I was going to test out there, but then everything kind of shut down. So I started over. Like I looked at my pull up and I was like, all right, I need to fix this, and this. So I started again with no weight. I just repatterned my pull up. I repatterned the way I, approached the bar, So my pathway to the top, my different focuses for each part of the pull-up, even my gaze, like where my head position, everything. I reanalyzed and restructured everything. Started all the way over, started again with the 8 kilo. Once I got that and moved on to the 12 and eventually worked my way up. And this time I was able to get the 24. And so I think, maybe in the next year or so, I'll sign up for that cert and I'll be able to test it out. But that's a skill that I've also held on to. So now that I've got it, it's like, I can just keep going with it. I mean, this year I'm hoping to get the 28 kilo over the bar, or maybe even progress. I think we have a 32 as well. So I can keep going with it. But yeah, eventually I think I'd like to test it out. I did film. So I did do one day. I filmed all 3 of the lifts within like a 10-minute frame or something like that. So I kind of like mimicked the test out and was like, I did it. It's on film. I already did it. So
that should be enough.
So yeah, right? I just send it to them. They'll approve me.
Hey.
The thing with the Iron Maiden is like, it's more just bragging rights anyway. It's not like, you get CEUs or a cert or anything like that. It's just kind of, you are Iron Maiden approved.
Was breath work really integral part of your dancing?
No.
Oh, no. Really?
Not at all. Yeah, I didn't really learn breath work until I learned how to train pre and postnatal women. Oh. So I had dabbled with it. Like I had done some breath work in like some meditation classes and things like that. But no, in the dance world, I remember having teachers that would tell us, okay, I want you to bend forward. I want you to suck in your stomach as much as you can. And then I want you to stand up, keep it like that, and then dance like that. Literally like,
damn.
Suck in as much as possible. Like, I'm not kidding. This guy like had us all do it. And he's like, okay, so when you're bent over, you're going to suck everything in and then stand up, keep it like that. And then like dance like that. Wow. And we were all just like, oh, what? There's some teachers here and there and choreographers would just, tell us to breathe. They would just say, make sure you're breathing. And we were also constantly told, like, when you're on stage, you absolutely cannot let your stomach hang out. You cannot. You have to support your stomach. So when you're on stage, like, especially, you cannot have a moment of like, So what would have been helpful is teaching us how to breathe without just like, letting everything go, but actually using your TVA and your pelvic floor and your diaphragm all working together in order to breathe. But they were just, we were just told, don't, just breathe, remember to breathe. And it usually ended up in that like high chest breathing because you're just trying to like keep everything in your stomach. I always had a problem with like dancing like this, my shoulders up, and I was always very tense up here because I'm just trying to like keep it all like sucked in. So yeah, a lot of the choreographers, the people I work with now, we all practice belly breathing and we use it on stage, and like that's all good. But I mean, there are probably some, it's again like that slowly changing kind of thing where it's like the older generation is not accepting it, but the younger generation is kind of like, hey, like we'd like to breathe while we dance, like actually breathe, So yeah, I started breath work, I don't know, when I was like 25, 26. It helps, like once I started, I was like, wow, like I can't believe I haven't been using this for so long. And, it helps to develop your core muscles. So I don't know, they didn't teach it to us, but that's something I learned through fitness that I actually transferred into my dance career. So
that's really surprising because I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I would imagine, the breath work would just help you be more relaxed on stage too.
You would think so, right? But no, I mean, not so much. And that's, what I was talking about before with learning different forms of dance. When you're doing something like, let's just say like a West African dance class where you are like stomping on the floor, you're like flinging your body around so fast, like you have to breathe with your entire body, in order to like just make it through. So learning different forms of dance, like, I'm just personally speaking from my training and background, but something like West African dance or like even like hip hop, something that's not seen as a traditional like concert dance technique, I think that you get a lot more of that breathing in there. And it's just, it's just that stigma of like the ballet, the modern, the stuffy concert dance kind of thing where the dancers are just like, you just have to be a blank canvas, an empty vessel, and, not breathing. Like, you're not living. You are whatever you're supposed to be putting on stage. So you're supposed to be seen as like not real. That's something I have definitely had to learn. And mostly that release, that exhale, that pelvic floor release, and just like relaxing the shoulders. But you're obviously, your core is still engaged. You're still stabilizing your spine. You're using your TVA and your pelvic floor muscles, but that release was definitely hard for me to learn.
What have you got in the works over the next year or two?
Wow. Yeah. So I think being out here on the West Coast, now that things are opening up, we want to hit the ground running. I would like to, there's a couple of dance companies out here that I'd like to not only do some freelance work with, but hopefully work with their dancers and start like maybe training some of them. We love the movement culture out here. Back in New York, the fitness scene was very much kind of like meat heady. So we're, everyone's just like, it's really true. Like, everyone is just like on the grind, go, go, go all the time. So when you hit the gym, it's just like, I want to lift stuff up and like throw it down and, just like quantity over quality. So it'll be nice to really start to meet people out here that are kind of in line with the whole, quality over quantity. And I'm looking forward to spending more time down at Muscle Beach, which is just a mile and a half down the road. Mm-hmm. So Chad and I are hopefully going to be working together on a couple of projects, training people side by side, doing classes, that kind of thing. I'm creating a solo that's going to be premiering later this summer. It's going to be premiered virtually, working hard on that. It's turning into quite a project of unlearning for me, in terms of kind of that dancer background of being an empty vessel and a blank canvas, and kind of shutting down the walls. And I'm unlearning that kind of like closed offness in my not only my personal life, but just in the way that I dance, and kind of learning to be a little bit more vulnerable and opening up. So creating a solo about that. So we'll see how it turns out. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
We're looking forward to having you and Chad as a couple of our master instructors for us for Stick Mobility. So we are definitely looking forward to that happening.
Yes, I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. That would be so awesome. And I also work very closely with Animal Flow, so I'm one of their regional leaders, and so I'll be, getting in touch with the community around here and spreading the word about, body weight training and Animal Flow, and getting some jams together with other instructors out in this area. So yeah, lots of big stuff coming up, and we just need everything to open now, and we'll hit the ground running.
June 15th.
June 15th, right?
June 15th?
Yeah.
Yes. June 15th. Oh, you can't come soon enough.
So how can people get a hold of you? Social media?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram as Body Articulate. And that is my main form of social media. And you can also, email me there, message me or whatever. Yeah. That would probably be that would be the best way to find me on Instagram, Body Articulate.
Well, Morgan, it was fantastic. Thank you for coming on. We love all the dance background stuff. Very eye-opening. Yeah, a lot of stuff I would have had no clue. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and let us know when that solo is going to premiere, so we can help promote it for you too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely will. Like I said, later this summer. And I'll hit you guys up about that. And thank you so much for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And to all the listeners out there, until next episode, be good to each other.